Hey y'all, Jamie here, back with another episode of Milk, Honey, and Mayhem. I want to take a second to say thank you to all my subscribers, and I really appreciate the CashApps. You know who you are. Today's video is a difficult one for several reasons, but you guys have been asking, and I want you to know that I listen. And when I decided to go ahead and do this one, I didn't take into account that it was the first week of school, and I do apologize for that. Today's video is on the incident that took place at Richland High School here in Giles County, Tennessee on November 15th, 1995. See, 4 years before Columbine, 17-year-old Jaime Rouse walked into the north entrance of Richland School in Linville, Tennessee with a .22 Remington Viper and began popping off hollow point rounds. This is not a tale to be sensationalized, and I won't be doing that here. What happened on that day shattered not only the families involved, but our entire community. A lot of us still haven't healed from that day, me included. I wasn't at Richland that day. I went to Giles County High School. But Jaime Rouse was my friend, and visual proof of that still exists in the yard of my childhood home. So I'm going to give you the facts and the view from my periphery. And there are trigger warnings all over this video today. If this makes you uncomfortable enough to affect your mental stability at the moment, please don't watch this one. I'll still love you. And if it brings up emotions that you thought you'd buried deep up to the surface, I'm with you. It has me too. Let's all be there in spirit for each other as we talk about this one, yeah? Why Jaime made the decision to do what he did that day is multifaceted, so we might as well start at the beginning. James Ellison Rouse had a rough upbringing. Not that he wasn't loved, but things weren't easy. His mama Cheryl worked at Gabriel, and his daddy Ellison drove a truck for Ronnie Bledsoe. Good people, as we say around here. But addiction doesn't discriminate, and it sure got its grip on Ellison Rouse. If there was a substance to use, you can bet he did it, and drank heavily on top of all that too. He was an angry drunk, and one of Jamie's earliest memories was of his father in a rage punching a hole through the wall next to his mom's head. Ellison's demons, they went hard. His older brother had been gay, and he passed from AIDS before anyone really knew what AIDS was. He hated his brother for that, for the shame and stigma that he felt that brought to his family. He made a big fuss when Cheryl bathed Jaime with his younger brother Jeremy, and always pressured both his sons to practice the male gaze. That only happened when he was home, which wasn't often due to his job. In an interview with the LA Times, Cheryl recounts that Jaime began having night terrors as soon as they moved into their home out on Tight Bark Holler. He was only 6 years old when he began having panic attacks, but they weren't just any old panic attack. Jaime saw things, shadows, ghosts. He heard voices whispering in the walls too. That's one thing that hasn't changed. In a recent interview, he said that the voices followed him to prison. Children's laughter, but also much more menacing growls. He was around 11 years old when he found out that the person who'd owned the house before them had taken his own life in Jaime and Jeremy's bedroom. Now, it was around this time that I got to know Jaime. See, Cheryl had gotten fed up with her husband's addictions and anger, packed up the boys, and moved out. The house they moved into was next door to mine. See, I was a tomboy, and I was tickled to have somebody my age to dig some Hot Wheel tracks through my mama's flower bed with. Bless her. When I told him my house was haunted too, that's where we really connected. I have so many memories with him on summer nights. Watermelon seed spitting contest, chasing each other around with the hose, and spinning around on my big tire swing until we were dizzy. I remember when he got his new pocket knife. He was so proud of that little case knife. We used it to carve this on the tree in my front yard. It's been almost 40 years, and I had to adjust the contrast pretty heavy, but there it is. The house I grew up in, here, is long gone. But this damn tree still holds its memories. Jaime had said that the heavy metal music he listened to made him feel powerful. But I can pinpoint the moment that he first felt that power because I was standing right next to him on my front porch. We'd been catching lightning bugs. I gave mine names, poked little holes in the top of a mason jar and put plenty of grass and water down in there, so they could come inside and spend the night in the house. Not Jaime, though. He smashed those lightning bugs between his fingers and smeared the glowing goo across his cheeks like war paint. Something changed in him that night. We hung out a few more times, but Ellison made a change for the better, and before too long, Cheryl had packed up the boys and went back on out to Tight Bark Hollow. He'd always been a quiet kid who was a target for the bullies, but when puberty hit and Jaime got a baby brother, he began to listen to darker music, wear darker clothes, and let his mind wander to darker places. The other kids teased him mercilessly. He began drinking and using substances to numb his pain and became obsessed with the film Natural Born Killers. His mama said that she thought he was just an angsty teenager. It was the height of metal grunge and mosh pits. Hell, I spent a good portion of my later teens looking and behaving much the same, but not to the extent that Jaime did. When he was a freshman, he had a notebook that he had scrawled a pentagram on top of. A couple of folks were picking on him and told him that if he wanted to be a real devil worshiper, he had to carve an inverted cross into his forehead. He reached into his pocket for that very same case knife we used to carve that on that old tree and did just that. The kids were horrified when he walked into the lunchroom that day, blood still running in rivulets down his face. It only emboldened the kids that picked on him, though. Jaime got himself a job, and that really helped. He enjoyed that, but he had a lot on his plate, and he turned to taking caffeine pills to stay awake and Tylenol PM to sleep. He had problems at school, too. He felt targeted by the teachers because he couldn't keep his grades up. His anger seethed beneath the surface, and one day, after an argument with his younger brother, he pulled his rifle on him. What should have been a huge red flag only resulted in Jaime losing his rifle for a few months. The problems only snowballed from there. He was turned down for a date by a girl he'd liked. He'd had multiple car troubles, a few traffic tickets, and he had some restrictions on his license. And a couple of days before the incident, he had accidentally backed into another vehicle down at Richland Trace Market, a convenience store just down the road from the school where all the kids like to meet up and hang out. There wasn't much damage, and nobody was there, so he left. But a girl at school overheard him talking about the accident and confronted him. "So you're the one that wrecked my boyfriend's car," she said. She went and got said boyfriend, and they humiliated Jaime. I won't be saying names here because we've all made mistakes, and I hope that you've grown from those experiences. We can always be better, yeah? Plus, it wasn't just that incident. Maybe that incident had nothing at all to do with it. I'm not even sure Jaime knows why he did it. Here's a clip of him speaking about that.
I had a lot of underlying rage. I was wearing all black at that time because that's just the way I felt.
In fact, what influence did the movie Natural Born Killers have on you?
It made killing seem cool. I mean, that's the way I took it. And I remember sitting down on my couch watching it. It made me feel angry and sometimes just evil. I mean, outright evil. Music is something that's I'd listen to all the time. I mean, at home, in my car. I would think, this ain't affecting me. You have to be weak-minded to let this stuff affect you. And the whole time it had affected me. I mean, it helped shape the way I thought. I remember saying, "My God, what have I done?"
Whatever the reason, he woke up that November day 30 years ago, hid his .22 Remington Viper full of hollow point shots in the bushes outside his house before sneaking back inside, throwing on some black jeans and a black Pantera t-shirt and telling his mama later. He loaded the .22 into the car and headed over to pick up his friend, Stephen Abbott. Jaime had discussed his plans with Stephen, but Stephen thought he was joking until he saw the weapon in the seat. Jaime had given Stephen the keys so that he could drive the rest of the way to the school. See, Jaime had plans to pop the state trooper that usually directed school traffic, the one who'd given him those traffic tickets. Stephen has said that if the trooper had been out there, he wouldn't even have pulled into the school that day. But the trooper wasn't there. He told Stephen to pull up and stop right in front of the north entrance to the school. He hopped out before the car had even stopped moving and went in, finger on the trigger. The first people he saw were two of the school's most beloved teachers, Carolyn Foster and Carol Yancey. It was 7:55 a.m. The bell had just rung for first period. Kids were everywhere. Worse were the kindergartners, who were just being dropped off to walk into a nightmare. He shot Carolyn Foster just under her nose, and the round hit her main artery, killing her instantly. He shot Carol Yancey in the forehead, on the left side just under her hairline, and the bullet exploded just above her left ear. Somehow, she managed to survive. With his sights set on Principal Hobbs, Jaime made his way down to the cafeteria where most of the students and staff were finishing up breakfast. He spotted Coach Ron Shirey and took aim. But this time his aim was off. That round went right through the throat of 14-year-old Diane Collins. Diane was a sweet girl, smart and popular, and the most baffling part of all was that Diane was his younger brother Jeremy's best friend. The shock of what he'd just done gave Jaime enough pause for the ag teacher, James Nichols, and one of the older students to tackle him and get the weapon away from him. Jaime fought that hard, though, and he managed to get off one round that went into the ceiling before they got it away from him. See, Jaime didn't plan to leave the school that day. Not breathing, at least. That feeling would only get worse for him when he was in jail, when the realization of all of what he'd done hit him, as he sat in the holding cell and watched the destruction play out on the news that was playing on a small television in the office that he could just barely see through the bars. Jaime would try to accomplish that many times, through many different ways. He shattered a Game Boy given to him in juvenile lockup and used the shards from the screen to try and cut his wrists. He attempted to electrocute himself, starve himself, and overdose, but the staff managed to prevent him from succeeding each time. He was sent to a mental institution, where the doctor who had seen Jaime initially diagnosed him with only depression. He gave no concern to the voices Jaime heard, nonsensical segments of thought, leafing to a tree, hate to feel, and a woman's scratchy voice just repeating, "We've got you on a string now." While there, Jaime fully believed that he had the powers of telekinesis and astral projection. He was assigned a second doctor who immediately recognized the symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia and diagnosed him as such. But y'all know how that works in a small town full of grudges. And just before the hearing, to determine whether Jaime was competent to stand trial, that first doctor slid back in there and testified to him only suffering from depression. Jaime was charged with 1 count of first degree and 1 count of second degree and 1 count of first degree attempted murder. The next day, Stephen Abbott was arrested and charged with criminal responsibility for second degree and for attempted first and second degree murder because he drove him to school that day, knowing what his plans were. Things were complicated for the Rouse family, to say the least. Jaime was gone, at least for them, and the friends that they would normally call on to help understand and offer comfort, well, they were busy grieving their own loss. Cheryl couldn't reach out to the Collinses. They were friends, and she knew the pain that they were feeling, but it was caused at the hands of her own son. Ellison's boss sent flowers to Diane Collins's funeral on behalf of the family, and the Collins, well, they sent a thank you note back in return. But the Rouse family began to receive death threats, and their middle son Jeremy, who still attended Richland High School, well, he caught the brunt of it. Jeremy was tortured by the other kids after what Jaime had done. That was expected, but what wasn't expected was how Jeremy handled it. He loved his older brother, but he also hated him for what he'd done. But regardless, it was still quite a shock on December 19th, 1995, when Ellison Rouse opened the front door to find sheriff deputies surrounding his home with their weapons drawn. They were there to arrest Jamie's younger brother, Jeremy, for solicitation of first-degree murder. Several students had him on tape saying that he wanted to finish what his brother had started with the teachers, and one panicked parent had even called the sheriff's department to report that he had said he wanted to do the same thing that was done to Diane to his daughter. Jeremy admitted to all of it, but said that he never actually meant any of it. But in February of 1996, he went before Judge Robert E. Lee Jr. and was found guilty. The case went on to the circuit court, where he's again determined to be guilty and was sentenced to a juvenile detention center until he turned 18. Adam, the youngest Rouse boy, is 8 when Jeremy gets arrested. His parents immediately start homeschooling because they know he cannot go back to Richland. Isolated and alone, Adam picks up the phone to call his best friend and invite him over to play. But Adam's best friend was Chrissy Collins, Diane Collins' younger sister. He was so innocent, bless him. He had no idea the pain that seeing that particular number come up on Diane Collins' mom's caller ID would cause. Chrissy never came to the phone, and Adam grew up pretty fast after that. January of 96, that was when Judge Lee decided that Jaime Rouse and Stephen Abbott should be tried as adults. On August 2nd, 1996, Stephen Abbott was sentenced to 40 years in prison, which was later reduced to 27 years, and he was released on January 26, 2014. Jeremy was an exceptional inmate at the juvenile center. He never got into any more trouble after he was released and went on to make a good life for himself. Since Jaime had been declared competent to stand trial, he agreed to accept a plea deal, not because he thought that would benefit him in any way, but because he wanted to spare the families involved the hell that he knew that trial would be. But at the last minute, the prosecutors pulled the deal off the table. The trial was just awful, heart-wrenching, and raw. It lasted 9 days. The jury deliberated only 4 hours and 27 minutes before they came back with guilty on all counts verdict. As for sentencing, that same jury needed only 3 more hours to decide 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole to run consecutively, plus an additional 50 years. Just before he was sent to prison, he was baptized at the nearby Church of Christ in his orange jumpsuit and shackles. James Ellison Rouse will never again see the outside of a prison. He's okay with that. He knows what he did was horrible, and he's where he deserves to be. When Jeremy was finally released, the Rouse family packed up and moved to Wayne County, where Ellison got himself clean and became the husband that Cheryl always knew he could be, and the father that all 3 of those boys deserved. Even though it's been 30 years, the folks here are still traumatized. I guess I am too, even though I didn't really realize it. I'd pushed those emotions down as far as they could go, and when I went up to my old homestead to snag that picture of the tree, I had some strange flashback that just put me back right there that day and made me physically sick to my stomach. I want to end this video with a quote from Ellison Rouse. There are 2 things that we never say now. My child would never do that, and things can't get any worse. Thanks for watching. Hug your babies tight and be nice to each other, because you never know what hell is in somebody else's mind. Until next time, y'all be good.